When I was a little boy, I used to sneak into the church at playground time because I wasn't really fond of the other children anyway, so I went into the church and I focused on the cross. And this time I didn't see the plaques around the walls as I did when I was in the church and listening to sermons. I saw the cross and I saw through the cross. And I was suddenly very excited because I could see the one that they talked about in the church sometimes, and the one that I would later call the stranger from Galilee. I could see this person suffocating and dying on a cross, and I could see him being taken down, and I could see him being taken away, and his mother with her hand on the bier that bore his body. And I saw him as utterly vulnerable. He looked like that, utterly vulnerable. And I realized for the first time, I think, as a child, that we're all utterly vulnerable and that we only have a limited time in which to do what we have to do. Every person is vulnerable, and some, of course, are more vulnerable than others because of circumstances, but that day I understood the vulnerability that dying can bring to a person's life and the way in which it can threaten and be destructive if it comes too early. I understood that. I was never really converted to being a Christian because I knew from the beginning, and that day I knew even more clearly that what I'd heard in the Sunday school and elsewhere was utterly true. I suddenly believed all of that, and I knew it was real, and I sat there utterly animated. I knew that what I'd heard was real, that this person was somehow imbued with a mystery that went beyond all mysteries, and that he well held something within him that was deeper than anything I might ever get to know. And I went running home to tell my father, who only went to church very occasionally. We said hatchings, matchings and dispatchings, baptisms, marriages and funerals. I tried to tell him how I felt, and he didn't want to listen to me, and it was very hard for me not to be heard at that stage. But years later I would understand why, that you cannot argue people into the deepest aspects of their lives. They can't be argued into that, or they cannot be threatened into that either. So as a child I always had that picture with me, and when I went back there years later to celebrate Holy Communion in the church as a priest of the church, I asked if it was the same cross, because those moments stay with you forever. They are the moments that you always remember, the moments that are programmatic in your life, and it certainly was for me. So I embarked on a journey that day, and I went on that journey all the way to things that touched my whole life. One day I lived in a place called Blaney, and in that place I began to feel a certain presence in the lounge room. It was just on the left-hand side of the lounge room, and it grew more and more intense. It was like the sort of thing that you would see in the movies. It was more and more intense, and I wondered what it was all about. And then I went looking for the local parish priest to tell him about it, and I tried to express what it was like. He sent me to see the Bishop of Bathurst, a very quiet man who sat there and smoked a pipe and looked at me. His name was Kenneth Leslie. He would become a very significant person in my life, but I didn't know that at that time. Sometimes we don't know, and I didn't know. But he listened to me for 3/4 of an hour while I went on with some rubbish about what a great priest I would be. And at the end of it, he just said, "Well, I think you'll do, boy. As long as you love God and love people, you'll be all right." He would become such a significant person to me, and he would eventually ordain me as a deacon and a priest in the Anglican Church. When he was very old, in his 90s, he came to Orange, where I was at that time, in New South Wales, and he came and he said to me, "You've done all right, boy. You've done all the things I asked you to do. I asked you to love God and love people, because that was the big thing. And you've done that, and both as a priest and as a missionary and as a scholar, and all of the things that you've done. I'm proud of you." To hear that from him was an incredible accolade, more important than any other person saying it, I think, at that time for me. What a wonderful man, and what an impression he made on my life.